Okay, so now what I'm going to do is look at that information that I've just produced and processed and transpose that onto the mind map. I'll start off with a picture. This is really important that you do a picture in the middle or something that really gets you thinking about the atomic structure. The title of your mind map, the concept that you're looking at is the atomic structure. And so I'm going to draw a picture of a atom. And the one that comes to mind for me is the nucleus with the electrons in the outer shell, right? In the shells in the outside. You probably can't see that very well because I'm using a pen, a small lighter pen there. But I've got a picture of a atomic structure. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some colors to help me make sense out of this. So I've got some markers over here. We're going to use these. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, well, we've got our central image. It's to do with the atomic structure. Now, for some of you, that is sufficient. That picture is sufficient. All right, you've got a picture of, just for clarity, I'm going to make them a bit more stronger looking. And you've got a outer shell as well. Now, the first thing you're going to do is make a branch. And your first main branch, you're going to write down what you've got in your information over here. So if you just follow my arrow, you can see here that we've got an idea here, which we're going to put on our branch, which is the nucleus. Now the nucleus is at the center of every atom. So here we're going to write the word nucleus because this is an easy visual for me. And the nucleus is going to be at the center of an atom. So if I want to now, you can start writing information about the nucleus. So it's in the center, spelt CENTRE, of an atom. Yeah. And we don't need to write the word atom because we know it. But if we don't know what atoms are, what we're talking about, we might just write it underneath. So center of an atom. Now the main thing is to keep the branches with at least 3 to 5 words, no more than that. Otherwise, it just gets too information overloaded, and you do not want that. Okay, the next part of it then says the nucleus contains two types subatomic particles, protons and neutrons. Now, this is again technical words, so they can be our sub branches, and we can write over here our subatomic P for particles, because this is my own notes, right? And what are those subatomic particles? Well, we see that we've got protons, neutrons, and electrons. Okay, so we've got protons, neutrons, and electrons. P and E, which can probably be rearranged to make the word pen. Yeah, that might be an easy way for you to remember it. And if you want, you can just draw a pen over here, so you remember what that means, right? So this is a. So let's try that again. PEN, right? So you've drawn some sort of pen there, and that's your visual on your mind map. And that's for you to keep. Now, it says over here that the electrons are tiny particles. So you might want to just off this write down the word tiny. So let's do that. Let's write down tiny. Okay, so we know, and the little p for particles. So we know that the electrons are tiny particles as well, compared to these two, which are clearly going to be much larger. Moving on to the next information paragraph. So it says the following. It says that protons have a positive charge, neutrons have a no charge, and electrons have a -1 charge or negatively charged. So we can actually have them as 3 separate points. So I'm going to do that. Let's put protons, make that red. Let's see if we can get a red color. Now, why do we use different colors? Is because it helps us color code and visualize what's going on. Okay, so here, we're going to make the thick branch again. Now, it's protons, which is underlined, and positive charge. So I'm going to put a positive charge because that's the one that we can visualize. And we know that they are protons. They have a +1 charge. Okay. And we have the next one, which are neutrons. I'll just use a green color for that. And let's say that these are neutrons, neutral, because that I remember that. And I'm going to put a 0 charge. Okay. And the branch is that it has no charge, because over here now, if you follow my arrow again, it has no charge. So I'm going to write over here no charge. Okay. So far so good. And now the electrons, I'll put it on the left hand side. And those will be the following. So electrons in blue. So let's just make that is electrons. You can color it in if you want to. Just a branch, and try and keep the words the same side as the branches. These are our electrons, aren't they? So nice, easy symbol for negative charge for our electrons. Okay, so far so good. So that second paragraph is done, essentially. Now we also have the mass of an atom is concentrated in the nucleus. Okay, so we can say over here that I'm going to put it in the first branch because we can, can't we? That the mass is concentrated in the nucleus, right? So I'm just going to write this a bit smaller for you guys to see, but you can see that the mass is concentrated in the nucleus. And my brain is able to recognize that because I know that I'm talking about the nucleus, it's concentrated in the nucleus. Okay, so that's the way the most of the mass is. Moving on, protons and neutrons each have the same mass. So here, if we wanted to, we can have another branch just for the word mass. Okay, so because mass is easy for me to remember, it's how heavy things are. Okay, and we're saying that the protons and the neutrons are the same mass. If you compare that to the electrons, which is on the next line, it's saying over here they're so light their mass can be ignored because they have a mass of 2,000 times less than the protons and the neutrons. So over here, I can write electrons is 1/2,000. Okay, so literally they have no mass. Okay, or a very, very light mass. You can say over here almost 0. Almost 0. So there you have it. So about the mass, we know that the proton and the neutrons have the same mass, and we know that the electrons are very, very light. And I'm going to write over here the word light. I can even show, if I wanted to, some feathers just to represent that this is very, very light. Yeah. Now, of course, don't forget, this is your work. So you just make it look a little bit more fancy. If you don't know what those are, you can write over here light as a feather. So you represent and you recognize that this is talking about something that you can visualize and remember. Every atom contains the same number of protons and electrons. So here we have to talk about the atom being the same mass. So I'll do this in a different color. I'll do this in blue. And here, we're going to write over here the word atom. And you might say over here the words same and we just write down what they are. They have the same number of protons and electrons. Protons and electrons. Okay. And we also know that the atom is the same because we did an example, didn't we? So we can just have an example over here where carbon 12 and 6 has 6 protons, 6 electrons, and they both cancel out. All right, I don't need to write down the word cancel out because I know that the protons and electrons are the same. Okay, that is coming just a little bit out of view, so I'm just going to put it a little bit higher up so you can see that. And there you have it. So you've been able to process all of that information. We know that we have 6 protons and 6 electrons. And if I want to, I could write over here 6 protons, 6 electrons. These are positive, these are negative, aren't they? So positive and negative will cancel each other out. And there you have it. You have been able to process that information. Sometimes you might want to rejig information, and you can probably put information on either of these as well. So I know that the proton and neutrons are the same. Okay, so what I'll do over here is I'll write neutrons in brackets if I want to. I'll write it on one of these branches underneath, and we can write down that they have a mass of 1. And the proton also has a mass of 1. Okay, and we know that both of these, the neutrons and the protons, are in the nucleus, which we've said over here, but we can write that down and make it much more clearer. So we can say, and we can connect that and say, well, the protons are both in the nucleus, and the electrons, as we know from the text, okay, which should say somewhere over here. If it doesn't, we've written it down in our picture, and we can also represent it as well, which is that they are found in shells or energy levels. So you can see that I've added extra information to my mind maps because these things are editable. You can add to them later on as well. And there you have it, guys, my mind map.